Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by MMA Veteran James Terry. James, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing good. James, I have to start with your last fight back at Bellator 115, April 4th of this year. I bet it's not a fight that you want to relive, but I don't think we can look past it because it was such a horrible decision. I scored the fight 30-27 for you, but somehow we came back with a split decision and Rick Reeves on the winning end of that split decision. Just curious, how did you score the fight, and when it was announced that it was a split decision, what went through your mind? Because you've been down this road before.
Yeah, you know what, man? I'm glad we're talking about it because it needs to be talked about. There needs to be changes in MMA with the scoring system. We adopted the scoring system from boxing, and it's kind of ridiculous. I did think I won the fight, obviously. I thought it was pretty clear. I thought it was extremely clear that I won the first and third round. The second round, Reeves had his moments. I kind of slowed down the pace a little bit. It was a high-altitude fight. I kind of felt myself getting tired a little more than usual. So I wanted to kind of tone down, use some footwork, use some evasiveness, and, slow the pace of the fight down a little bit from a grappling standpoint. But I thought I still won the second round. In the heat of the moment, to be honest with you, in the fight, I was like, okay, I won the first one, and I always look at the fight in the worst light possible, and I go, okay, he won the second one. So going into that third round, like I said, even though I do think I won the second round, in the heat of the moment going into the third round, I did give Reeves the second round, so I knew I had to come out there and destroy in the third round to win it. And I did that. So, but yeah, there's some issues with MMA judging. I think we all know that. How are we going to correct this? I don't know. The commission has got to step up. There's got to be some rule changes because in the best light possible, for somebody to edge out one or two rounds in a fight and then get totally dominated in the third round of a fight and then win the fight, it makes no sense. So, unfortunately, this has happened to me before, and it was kind of like deja vu, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, what do you think the scoring system needs to be? Because I personally like the half-point system, but again, that's flawed as well because it all falls back on the judges. They've got to be the ones implementing it. This 10-9 system, you have all these referees who judges who refuse to give a 10-8. Then you have these judges who refuse to score different things. You got judges who say they don't score leg kicks. Then you have judges who come from Muay Thai who claim that elbows and knees are more effective and score higher. You got all this crazy stuff. These guys who come from different sports like a boxing or some other combat sport who aren't familiar with the ground. You've got all kinds of people that are judging this this sport that have no business judging it. So what needs to change more, the actual people judging the fight or the actual scoring system?
Well, I think both need to change. The scoring system is ridiculous. Being reluctant to give somebody a 10-8 round when they totally get destroyed is stupid. If somebody edges a round, like I said, 10-9, and then somebody wins dominantly, it's the same score. There needs to be, I think, the accumulation of the fight, like how Pride used to do, kind of like a cumulative damage, or they score each round individually, but they also look at the accumulation of the fight. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Joe Rogan, and he was talking about, he made a very good point. A lot of the judges are not experts in the field of MMA. And a lot of that is because the sport's so young. But we have people that are in there scoring fights that, it's just from a political standpoint, are in there. They don't really know what they're doing. This is a problem with boxing, too. But more so in MMA because MMA is, a little harder to judge. There's a little more, there's more details involved. You have to be knowledgeable about grappling. If you're watching somebody grapple and you have no expertise in grappling or don't know grappling at all, you're seeing something completely different than I'm seeing, And likewise with Muay Thai or in the clinch, kickboxing, there's a lot of little, small little things that happen that an expert needs to be judging these fights on, not just some person that got in because they were grandfathered in or whatever.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned Pride, the overall scoring of a fight. They used to look at the fight as a whole, not round by round, although, there were some circumstances where they looked at it round by round and then came to the conclusion as a whole that fighter would win the fight. But then again, that thing's flawed, because then these judges come in and they look at damage, which damage under the unified rules is not a factor. You get someone like you in there who could be winning a fight and gets cut easily, and then there's blood all over the place, and then that judge thinks that the other guy did a bunch of damage. So I think that's flawed as well, don't you think?
I agree. I mean, I think I lost the fight against Bobby Green, even though all the major MMA analysts scored the fight for me. I didn't read one that scored the fight for him. Mm-hmm. That was a little closer of a fight, but yet again, I lost a split decision against Bobby Green, and I feel like it was because I was cut. He had cut me, and I was bleeding, and I'm very light-skinned, so the red shows up very easily on me. He was bleeding as well, but you couldn't tell as much with him, just based on his skin color. There's a lot of things that have worked against me with the judges, and I think I'm kind of like a poster boy for one of the reasons that the judging needs to, there needs to be more strict guidelines for judges, more strict guidelines for what the rules are, what's the criteria for who wins the fight. Mm-hmm. I've definitely come up short on that in the last couple of years. Anytime I've come to a decision in the last 2 years, I think, is it's been for the other guy.
Right.
And every time I've won, it's been a knockout. So it'd be nice to see some things go a little different. If things were a little different, I'd be in a lot different place in my career right now. Mm-hmm. I would be in the UFC right now, and I would maybe rank in the top 10.
Right.
Instead of Bobby. I'm not saying that Bobby doesn't deserve it. Bobby's a fantastic fighter, and by no means was that fight a blowout in either way, but I do feel like I won the fight. And of course, he feels like he won the fight, but I think more people agree with me than him. And it is what it is. But now I get a chance with Bellator, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to Bellator in just a second, but another thing about the judges, obviously it's frustrating. Obviously, it's disappointing because, like you just mentioned, if those two fights against Burrell and Bobby Green go the way they should have went, with you on the winning end, you would be in the UFC right now. Yep. There's that old saying, "Oh, don't leave it in the hands of the judges," but that's easier said than done, because some of these guys are tough to finish, or some of these guys, they get into a little bit of trouble and then they're on their bike for the rest of the fight. Like it's very hard to finish some of these guys. So, how frustrating is it that you have a tough fight and then you go to the judges' scorecards hoping and relying on them to do their job and do it correctly, and then it backfires and it doesn't work out that way? As a fighter, when you get done with a tough fight that you think you won, how frustrating is it when you go to the scorecards and it doesn't look like the way it played out?
Well, for me, it's terribly frustrating. This is my life. This is my livelihood. I put my heart and my soul into this. It's very frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. I mean, like I said, things would be a lot different for me right now if a couple of these decisions would have gone the way they should have. It's you put everything into something, and there's certain guidelines that are established by the so-called experts who are not experts, and it's terrible. It needs a change, man. It really needs a change, and I hope that my situation can really help MMA, because it needs a change. It's ridiculous. I can't even put in words how frustrated I am. I mean, I tend to be a person that pretty strong mentally, and I'm very positive, and this has been tough for me. This has been tough for me to get over. My last fight, losing to Rick Reeves. Rick Reeves came up to me immediately after the decision, and in the cage told me, "I don't agree with the decision." That's quote what he said to me. And then I lifted him up. I'm a good sport. I'm not gonna, I have much respect for Rick Reeves. He's a great fighter. And I lifted him up, and then he proceeded to lift me up. And yet again told me a couple of days later over Facebook or email, or I think it was a Facebook message, that he didn't agree with the decision. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, it's frustrating. I put everything into this, and also Rick Reeves had told me that he was retiring, and he has another passion. I guess he's a pastor, and that he's not really, in the MMA scene like I am.
Right.
And that was frustrating to me. Good for him, but it was frustrating for me because I'm somebody that's making a career out of this, that's trying to rise to the top, that wants to be a champion.
Right.
And he's, I almost want to say like he's dabbling in it. So that was frustrating to me. It was more than I can put into words. It's frustrating.
This whole issue about judging, any way you slice it, it's an issue. It's ridiculous. Every aspect of a judge's decision gone wrong. You have on the political side, you have these guys who are there because, like you said, are grandfathered in, or the commissions don't want to go out and search for people. They'll just have the guys that are already in-house judging. So you have that part of it. You also have the part of the fighters. I mean, this is ruining people's lives. You have people who are counting on getting a win bonus, and then when you have a judge's decision take that win bonus away from you, that's taking money out of your pocket. You also have the natural progression to go from a fight, because it messes up the promoter as well, because here, you just beat Rick Reeves, and so Bellator thinks, okay, you just won this fight. Okay, who can we match James Terry up with next? But then when the judges' scorecards come back, that plan all goes out the window, and now they're messed up because they can't really put you against a higher up opponent, because they can't really sell to the fans that didn't see the fight or heard about that it was a decision loss for you. They can't really sell you as a guy who moving up the ranks. And then on top of that, you have legacies that are getting messed up. You have guys who won fights who didn't deserve to win fights, and then you have guys who, on their resume have losses that shouldn't deserve those losses. So anywhere you slice it, it's completely messed up, and it's got to change. I don't know. I don't have the exact answers to make it change, but it's just crazy. But I'm just curious about the decisions that you've had, these decisions that haven't gone your way. The Rick Reeves, the Bobby Green, and the Noshawn Burrell fight. Of those three, what's the worst decision? Like, what's the one where you're like, I can't believe they screwed this one up?
The worst decision, that's a tough one. Bobby Green fight was close. So Bobby Green fight was the closest out of those, I would say, because first round was close. I thought I won it. Second round, it wasn't close. It wasn't a blowout, but I had him wobbled a couple times. And I almost put him out in the second round, so you could say that I dominated the second round, if you want to say that.
Right.
And then the third round, I felt like I was dominating the third round. I was putting the pressure on him, and then he caught me with a punch that wobbled me, real good punch as I came in, and then I wobbled him right back, and I thought that would have nullified it, but obviously didn't. 2 out of 3 judges scored that third round for him. Okay, that's your second. The Noshawn Burrell fight was really devastating to me, because that was my first fight on my Strikeforce contract, where they had basically superseded my previous contract, and it was going to be the best payout for me. And I just got married, and I had a little bump in the road with Carlos Fedor, which that was another fight that I thought that it was. I could see him winning the fight, but I felt like I was the one that controlled most of the action. He hit me with some pitter-patter shots yet again. I got cut in the fight, and it made it look a lot worse than it was. Me and Kung both thought I won that fight. I could understand me losing that fight. But I would say the Noshawn Burrell fight, because I had that momentum going. And that had never happened to me, where I for sure won a fight, and then I lost. It was just devastating, But this last one was just as bad as the Noshawn fight in my eyes, from a perspective of a shitty call,
Right.
But it was almost like I'm desensitized to it now. Like, it happened, and I was just like, oh God, not this again. Noshawn, it was like new, and it was like, what?
Right.
I didn't understand it, So yeah, the Noshawn and the Rick very similar, but I would have to go with the Noshawn for impact on me, and just for pure surprise.
Now, was there any way around these bad decisions that you had in Strikeforce, the Burrell fight and the Green fight, or was it just something where the UFC, they couldn't bring you aboard, they couldn't really overlook the fact that the judges messed up and didn't give you wins that you should have received? Was it just the numbers game that kept you out of the UFC? Because usually they tried their best to reward guys who get bad decisions towards them. They kind of try to overlook it as best they can, but in the current situation that you were in at that time, it was a numbers game. They were dissolving Strikeforce into the UFC. They had a bunch of contracts that they had to figure out what to do. Was it just the numbers game that kept you out?
Yeah, you know what? I honestly don't know. I mean, I was never talked to by anybody from Zuffa. I was just given an email and Zuffa. I'm not trying to badmouth them by saying they didn't talk to me, but yeah, there was no explanation. I was just given an email. No, I do know this. I was one of the last guys, from my understanding, on the Strikeforce roster to actually be cut. I know a lot of the guys over at AKA, because back then I was training a couple times a week with those guys. And so in December, before the last Strikeforce fight was like, let's say it was January 19th, 2012, right? Or 2013, excuse me.
Right.
They all knew in December of 2012 that they were cut, where I was kind of waiting in limbo, and I didn't get cut till 2 days after the fight. So 2 days after that last fight, I got cut. And, I mean, Kung and everybody, a lot of us obviously thought that I should have been signed by UFC, and we actually thought that it was a good chance, especially when we found out that a lot of the other guys that I had trained with already knew they were getting cut,
Now, what was the holdup from the Bobby Green fight to your next fight? Because there's a year gap. May 19th was the Green fight, and then you didn't return to action till June 15th of 2013, so there's that big gap in there. Was it just something where, you had real tough fights in Strikeforce, you trained with great guys, people didn't want to take that fight, or was there injuries involved? What happened there?
No, I wasn't injured. What happened was, I lost 2 fights in a row, split decision.
Right.
In quotations, okay? Air quotes there.
Right.
Lost 2 fights. So I was put in the back burner, obviously. Understandable, okay? So Bobby Green had fought, I think that June or July after we fought. He went out there and he beat some dude up. And then I was scheduled to fight October against Billy Evangelista. And my understanding of that fight was the winner against Billy goes to the UFC. That's what I was told by Billy's manager, who also is, kind of an acquaintance and friend of mine. So what happened with that one was that was the Frank Mir DC card, where Frank Mir got injured, I think was the criteria, and then they canceled the whole card. That was that card that was out in Oklahoma, or Oklahoma City, they canceled. So they paid me my show money, which was awesome. They didn't have to do that. It was like a 4-week prior. They canceled the card and they paid me my show money. But in hindsight, I never got the chance to fight for my right to go to the UFC. I was just cut,
I see. Now,
and then it was hard to get fights. Once I got cut, obviously it's not hard. It was hard for me to get a fight until I fought in June of that year. So it was just, I had to fight in local shows, and nobody wants to fight me in a local show.
Oh, I see. Now, I'm just curious, who's your manager? Is it Dwayne Zinkin? Is it Crazy Bob? Who's your manager?
Mike Kogan is my manager.
Oh, Mike Kogan is your manager. Oh.
Yeah, and Crazy Bob was Billy's manager. He's kind of affiliated with AKA, so he was the one that, basically told me about the UFC thing. I don't know how true. It makes complete sense because, me and Billy both were 2 of the top Strikeforce guys that didn't get signed,
Right. Is that a fight you're still interested in?
Yeah, Billy?
Yeah.
What, they actually offered me a fight. Against Billy. What was it? Actually, we're on talking about next week. my coach has a promotion 408 fights here in San Jose, Jane Estioko 408 fights, and they had offered me that fight, but something happened. We weren't able to put that together. Yeah, so that's basically what that was. And, I mean, I should be fighting Billy in a big show anyway. You know, and that was also another, like, from a business standpoint, me and Billy need to be fighting on, you know, Bellator, UFC, something like that, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know what? I'm a 170 pounder now, man. I stopped fighting 55, and the reason being is my first fight after getting cut from Strikeforce, I lost. And I lost a legitimate fight. I got finished by a guy at the UFC right now. His name is Mike Dellatore. He's a tough fighter. I was cutting too much weight though, man. I walk around at 195 and I'm lean. Some of these guys walk around at 95 and they fight 55, but they're fat and out of shape. I'm 95 and I'm ripped, you know. So I was cutting way too much weight. It was draining my body, and I dropped Billy with the first punch that I threw in the fight. And then I was trying to finish him, and he caught me, man. He caught me with the left hook, tipped the chin, and it was a very surreal moment. I kind of woke up and I was getting choked. And that guy, I was his ticket to UFC. So.
I see. Now, there's a fight that you had back in Strikeforce against Tarek Safadine, and that was a fight where you learned a lot from that fight. It was a loss to him, and, you know, obviously he went on to do a lot of great things. He captured the Strikeforce welterweight title, and now he's in the UFC. He's got some injuries right now, but he's still doing very well. The fight after that, the David Marshall fight, you could really see the improvements that you had made from that Tarek Safadine fight. Now, you didn't finish David Marshall, but it was still a very good performance on your end. Did you feel that it was a really good performance against Marshall? And also, what did you learn from the Safadine fight?
No, you know what? It's funny you point that out. I can tell that you pay attention because that was a shining moment. That was a turning point in my career with the Tarek Safadine fight. I was more of like I had the movement against Tarek, but I didn't have the finishing ability on that level, you know. My hands weren't as clean and crisp. I started working with a boxing coach after that, and you know, when I came out against David, I actually had devastating hands, and I showed that. You know, I was mixing in my kicks, my punches, and that was a big moment for me after the Tarek fight. Out of all my fights, I learned the most from the Tarek fight because he is a high-level fighter. He hit me with crazy shots. It showed me that I had a chin. At least I have a chin at 170.
Right.
I you know what? It really made me focus on some of my weaknesses. You know, Pat Miletich was pointing out my footwork. I needed to tune up my footwork in Tarek's fight because his footwork was a lot better than mine. And so I really just focused on footwork, focused on having some devastating hands to come together with my kicks. My kicks have always been hard. And all of a sudden I did win that fight against David. I came really close to finishing him, but I didn't. The end of the second round, I hit him with a Superman punch and I dropped him. And if I would have had 10 more seconds, that fight would have been over. But it wasn't. But my next two fights and all my wins since that fight have been knockouts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, do you still consider the Josh Thornburg fight your best performance?
I would say, yeah, that was a very good performance. I also had a real good performance against the Brazilian guy I fought, Magno Almeida. Mm-hmm. I had a good performance against him. That was not a televised fight, and Sean Shelby was joking around with Kung and I that he was kicking himself for not televising that fight because I had a pretty good knockout on that one. But yeah, I would say Thornburg, I really, I was hard to put it together, and I did great, and I'm probably the only asshole to decide to drop weight classes on a 3-fight win streak.
Right. Now, I'm just curious, are you still training at Kung Lee's gym?
Yeah, I train at Kung Lee's gym. I'm the team captain, the fight team over there, and I also train with Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu. Dave Camarillo has kind of adopted me as one of his students, and over the last year or so, I've been training jiu-jitsu with Dave and his guys. He has an army of really intelligent, very technical jiu-jitsu guys. And I train with Eugene Jackson, former UFC fighter. He's one of my striking coaches. He's one of my MMA coaches. He comes into Kung. Because Kung is not around as much as he used to be. So he comes into Kung. Kung and Jane have kind of got together a couple of the coaches to fill in the spot. But yeah, so I've been working with Eugene Jackson also, and then of course Kung comes in. Scott Sheely, who is Kung's coach, comes in from during Kung's camp, and he works. He works with me a little bit, and then of course Kung. I work with Kung. I've been working with him about once or twice a week as of late.
Now, I was talking to John Fitch, and he said that you and him were doing a lot of training at Dave Camarillo's. I'm just curious, how's Dave been? Because since he left AKA, he's kind of been flying under the radar. Obviously he's still in the game, but he isn't, where he was at one point in time where, he was really out there and people knew exactly what he was doing. How is he?
You know what? Dave is better than ever. Dave is running a couple of jiu-jitsu schools, Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu in Pleasanton and Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu in San Jose, and his schools are just booming. It's family martial arts, family jiu-jitsu, So most of 99% of his clientele are family and kids and, adults, So it's not a fighter gym. There's by no means a fighter gym, and I go in there and I train with some of his instructors. Some of the guys that are under him that instruct at his school, and I train with him. And Dave has a love for MMA, obviously, and that's kind of why I was saying he kind of adopted me and took me under his wing, because he's not trying to have a fight. He's not trying to do that. But he's made a lot of connections with guys, including myself at AKA, and we like to train with him, like John. Me and John were training together once a week, sparring, and Dave would, break it down and tell us what we were doing wrong, and we were just trying to help each other out, get some different looks for some sparring partners,
Now, you have this fight coming up. It's on a local show. Now, is this an MMA fight? Because I noticed that it's like a hybrid card. Like they have some kickboxing on there too. This is MMA, right? Yeah,
it's MMA. I only do MMA. I've never done any. I would be open for another fight, but it's an MMA fight. It's a pro-am card. It's on the main event, and pro-am and kickboxing and MMA, like you said. I've got another teammate on that card who is fought in Strikeforce. His name is Adam Antolin. And he is a beast. He's a 125-pounder, and in my eyes, he should be in the UFC. And I'm not just saying that. He's freaking good, man. We fought in Strikeforce together, and he lost at least one fight in Strikeforce. When I fought that guy, Josh Thornburg, he had lost a fight there that he was winning. He just got caught. But he's a tough guy. He'll be fighting there. Me and him are definitely the two pros. There might be another pro fight or two as well.
I see. Well, I was just making sure because you are a student of Kung Lee's, so I thought maybe you might have done some dabbling in some stand-up fighting.
Yeah, I was. We scheduled before I turned pro in MMA. We scheduled me a amateur kickboxing fight, and I got cut right before wrestling, and we had to kind of scratch that. So I have not done any other kickboxing events or anything like that. But I would definitely be down to. But MMA is my love. MMA is what I consider myself a high-level fighter at. I don't consider myself a high-level kickboxer, but I would love to compete in it.
I see. Now, you're fighting Daniel McWilliams. What do you know about him?
He's a tall jiu-jitsu guy. He looks pretty strong. He has a lot of fights. He seems like he gets finished or he finishes. He's a finisher. He goes out there. He looks like he's a game guy. He took a fight on a 3-week notice, and I don't think a lot of guys would want to fight me. And second of all, I don't think a lot of guys would fight me on a 3-week notice.
I see. Now, I'm just curious, how many fights do you have left on your contract with Bellator?
I actually in the process of negotiating a contract right now.
Oh.
So that's kind of up in the air.
But it's very likely that you'll be returning there.
Yes, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt, very, very likely.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to return there. I like that promotion. Scott Coker took over, as you're very well aware of, and I love Scott. He, he helped me to blossom my career. Very obviously, getting me in Strikeforce. So, I would love to fight for Bellator and Scott again.
I see. Well, James, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans?
Yeah, the sponsors is GFY Gear, BR Flooring, Magnum Drywall, Chris Sheldon at the Morning Crane Healing Arts Center. He's been helping me out a lot. Score Clinic. All those guys have been really awesome for me. So, Dr. Key, also Dr. Key Chiropractic, Peter. Appreciate you, Dr. Key. And CGR, if you guys are looking for a home in the Bay Area. Selly Group Realty, CGR, they've been there with me since day one. So, appreciate CGR. And to the fans, and you guys, if you're a hardcore fan, you probably remember me from the Strikeforce days, and just watch out, because I'm coming. I'm training hard. I'm 10 times better than I was then, and I just can't wait to get my opportunity to show the world what I can do.
Mm-hmm. James, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it, and best of luck coming up on July 19th.